On the AI scene, Lenny and Jenny talk, laughing in the crowd as the topics lock. From tech to love and all in between. In this show, we're living the dream, Chat and laugh, let's spin around. Every topic's on the ground. Lenny, Jenny, bring the heat. Feel the rhythm, move your feet.
Welcome back, everyone. Today, we're going deep on something pretty major. It's the proposed assisted dying law in the UK.
Yeah, it's definitely a hot topic and a complex one.
Absolutely. And our listeners have been following along, so they know this isn't some simple law. We've got all the documents and analyses, so let's get into it. It feels like this bill tries to walk a fine line between giving people choices and making sure things don't, go wrong.
Right. It's not just about the rules themselves, but how those rules try to balance individual freedom with the need for safeguards, I guess.
So finding that balance is really the key here.
I think so. It's crucial. And to understand that balance, I think we need to start by looking at what this bill actually allows.
Makes sense.
Right.
What can people actually do if this becomes law?
Well, it would give terminally ill adults in England and Wales the option to request assistance in ending their lives.
So it's specifically for people who are terminally ill.
Exactly. It's not about making assisted dying available for just anyone who's struggling with a health issue.
That makes sense. You wouldn't want it to be too easy to access, right?
Right. There are a lot of safeguards built into this bill. Like, first off, it's only for those with a clear terminal prognosis, meaning they're not expected to live longer than 6 months. And it's got to be terminal, not just serious.
So there's a definite time limit.
Right. And second, they got to be 18 or older and have lived in England and Wales for at least a year.
Interesting. So there's a residency requirement, too. I guess that's to make sure people aren't, coming from other countries just to use this law.
Yeah, it's about ensuring they have a real connection to these communities.
That makes sense. What about people with mental illnesses or disabilities? Would they be eligible?
That's a big question. And the bill's pretty clear on that. Mental illness or disability alone wouldn't qualify someone.
So it really is about focusing on those with terminal illnesses who are nearing the end of their lives. Okay, let's say someone meets all those criteria. What happens next? What's the process they'd have to go through?
Yeah, good question. It's not like you just ask and it happens.
Yeah.
It's a multi-layered process. Lots of steps. Safeguards built in at every stage.
Checks and balances.
Exactly. Think of it as a way to ensure everything's done carefully, thoughtfully, with full understanding of what's involved.
So walk me through it. Where does it all begin?
Okay, so it starts with the individual. They have to make a formal
Declaration
of their wish to end their life.
So not just saying it casually, but making it official.
Right. It has to be written out, witnessed, signed, the whole 9 yards.
So it's serious business.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
But even then, it doesn't stop there. 2 doctors have to get involved.
Your own doctor
And an independent one. They both have to confirm the diagnosis, make sure the person really understands what they're asking for, and that they're not being pressured.
That's a good point. You'd want to make sure it's truly their decision, not influenced by anyone else.
Exactly. And then, even after both doctors sign off, it goes to the High Court.
Wow, the High Court. That seems like a pretty big deal.
It is. Specifically, it goes to the Family Division of the High Court. They have to give their consent before anything else can happen.
So it's like a final check, like a judge signing off on a really important legal document?
Yeah, you can think of it that way. They're making sure the process has been followed properly and that everyone's rights are protected.
It definitely sounds like they're trying to be really careful here, making sure this isn't misused.
Exactly. And just to make sure, there's a waiting period, too, after the court gives consent.
How long is that?
At least 14 days. Or 6 days in certain situations where death is expected sooner.
So even after the court agrees, there's still time to, change your mind or make sure this is what you truly want.
Exactly. It's about preventing any rash decisions. And finally, after all that, the individual has to self-administer the medication.
So no one else can do it for them?
Nope. It has to be their own action.
That really emphasizes the whole idea of individual choice.
It does. And it leads us to another important part of this bill, the role of healthcare professionals.
Right. The doctors and nurses who would be involved in this, it must be really tough for them.
I can imagine. To balance their own beliefs with, what their patients want.
It's a sensitive issue, for sure.
And the bill recognizes that. The attending doctor can prescribe the medication, or it can be delivered by another doctor or an authorized nurse. But here's the important part. The bill explicitly states that no one is forced to participate.
Meaning?
Meaning they have the right to conscientious objection.
So if a doctor or nurse has a moral or religious objection, they don't have to be involved.
Exactly. Their choice is respected.
That's a really important consideration. It balances individual conscience with the rights of patients who want to access this option.
Precisely. And to ensure everything's clear, the bill requires that the doctors are able to communicate with the patient in whatever language they're most comfortable with.
Oh, so they might use an interpreter if needed.
Exactly. Because clear communication is essential, especially with such a sensitive topic.
Yeah.
But what happens if someone tries to abuse this system? Fake a signature or pressure someone into making their request. That's where the penalties come in. The bill lays out some very specific offenses.
Yeah.
Things like forging a signature or coercing someone into making a request. Those are big no-nos.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
I don't want someone being forced into making such a huge decision.
Exactly. It's about protecting people from being manipulated. And it's not just about protecting the individual making the request. There are safeguards around the medical opinions, too.
So like if a doctor lied or something.
Right. Providing a false medical opinion to support a declaration is a serious offense, too. It's about maintaining the integrity of the whole process, making sure doctors aren't taking advantage or anything like that.
Yeah, you'd want to make sure everything's above board.
Right.
It sounds like they've really tried to think of everything to prevent abuse. So what kind of penalties are we talking about here? Are these just like slaps on the wrist or something more serious?
Oh, no, the bill takes these offenses very seriously. They really do. For example, anything done with the intent of causing someone's death could lead to life imprisonment.
Wow, life imprisonment. They're not messing around.
Nope. It's a clear message that they're serious about these safeguards. This isn't just about choice. It's about making sure that choice is made with all the facts, with support, and without any external pressure.
That makes sense. We've talked about safeguards and penalties, but what about support for the individual, like counseling or information? Does the bill address that?
Absolutely. It's a big part of the process. In fact, before someone can even make that formal declaration, they have to be fully informed about all their options.
So like not just assisted dying, but other end-of-life choices too.
Exactly. Palliative care, other options that are out there. They want to make sure no one's choosing assisted dying just because they don't know what else is available.
That's a really important point. You wouldn't want someone making such a big decision without knowing all the possibilities.
Right. And it's not just about information. The bill also says guidance and counseling should be available throughout the whole process. It recognizes that this is a heavy decision and people might need support.
So they've got all the bases covered. Information, counseling, safeguards, penalties. It seems pretty thorough.
Yeah, they've tried to anticipate different scenarios and build in protections to make sure everything's done ethically and responsibly. Plus, there's an added layer of transparency, too. The chief medical officer will be keeping an eye on how the law is implemented and reporting back to Parliament annually.
Oh, so they'll be tracking how it's all working. That's good to know. What kind of information will be in those reports?
Things like how many people requested assisted dying, how many were approved or denied, and the reasons why. It's all about accountability and keeping the public informed.
So it's not just about passing a law and then forgetting about it. There's a system in place to make sure it's working the way it's supposed to. This has been a really fascinating deep dive. I feel like I have a much better understanding of this whole issue now.
It is a complex issue, lots of different angles, but it boils down to some really fundamental questions. What does this bill really mean? What's at the heart of it?
Well, like you said earlier, it's about giving people a choice, right? A difficult choice, but a choice nonetheless.
Exactly. It's about acknowledging that for some people facing a prolonged and painful death might feel like a loss of control over their own life and body.
Yeah, it's such a personal decision. And this bill recognizes that not everyone would choose this path, but for those who do, it offers a way to end their suffering on their own terms.
And importantly, it wouldn't be forced on anyone. It's about providing a choice for those who feel it's right for them, while ensuring it's a truly informed and voluntary decision, made without any pressure.
And that's where all those safeguards come in. They're there to protect people and make sure this option is used responsibly and ethically.
Exactly. The bill is trying to strike that balance between individual control and protecting vulnerable people from potential abuse.
It's definitely a lot to think about. These are questions we all might face at some point, whether it's for ourselves or someone we love.
It is, and it forces us to really confront our own beliefs about life, death, and what it means to die with dignity. How much control should we have over our final moments? These are big questions, and there are no easy answers.
You're right. And even if the specific bill doesn't become law, it sparked a really important conversation.
For sure. We need to be having these conversations openly and honestly, especially as medicine advances and end-of-life care keeps evolving.
So we've covered a lot about the bill itself, but this conversation seems to lead to even bigger questions, doesn't it?
It does. While this bill is focused on terminally ill adults, it raises another interesting question. What about people who are experiencing, really intense suffering, but their condition doesn't quite fit that strict definition of terminal?
Right, right. So where do we draw the line? When does someone have the right to make that choice? That's tough.
It's a massive question. And this bill kind of opens that door, gets people thinking about it. But it doesn't give us all the answers.
It's like we've been putting off this conversation for so long, and now it's right in front of us. We can't ignore it anymore.
Yeah. Maybe we have been. And as medicine changes, helps people live longer, often with really complex health issues, well, those questions about how and when to end life, they just get more and more complicated, don't they? It's not just black and white anymore.
And these are things everyone should be thinking about, right? Not just the lawmakers or doctors.
Definitely. We all need to have those tough talks, about what we believe, what we're scared of, how we want things to be at the end of life for ourselves and the people we care about.
It's heavy stuff. But I feel like this deep dive has really helped me understand what this bill is trying to do and all the other issues it brings up.
That's what we hope for. These conversations are hard, but they're important.
For our listeners who've been following this with us, we've got a bunch of resources in the show notes. The full text of the bill, articles, all that good stuff. It's worth a read so you can form your own opinion.
Exactly. This isn't about finding the right answer. It's about, engaging with these ideas thoughtfully, remembering the people who are facing these choices, treating them with dignity, and respecting their right to make those decisions.
Well said. Thanks for joining us for this deep dive into the assisted dying law here in the UK. Keep those conversations going, folks. We'll see you next time.